Greetings, and welcome to another video. And today, I have a new series for you guys. Today marks the first episode of Trainer Reacts. Now, when I say trainer, specifically, I have been licensed as a strength and conditioning coach, a personal trainer, a corrective exercise specialist, and a nutritionist. I'm also, getting close to the instructor rank in karate, yeah, but aside from that, yeah, that, yeah, I am officially a trainer in most regards. So, in this series, Trainer Reacts, I will be using my knowledge as a personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, corrective exercise specialist, nutritionist, all that, to examine various trainings. So, for starters, we're going to be looking at the training recommendations by by Jack Dempsey in his book Championship Fighting, Explosive Punching and Aggressive Defense. This is one of my favorite books of all time, and so we're going to be reviewing it. Or at least, the the chapter that's on training. Because, a good chunk of the book is all technical. Teaching you how to box, funnily enough. For reference, here are the chapters. Number 1, Explosives at Toledo, which was about a match he had. Good and Bad Toledo Aftermaths. 3, Punchers Are Made, Not Born. Why I Wrote This Book. Difference Between Fist Fighting and Boxing. You're the KO Kid. What is a Punch? The Falling Step. The Power Line, not the one from the Goofy movie. Relaying and Exploding. Stance. Footwork. Range. Straight punching from the whirl. Purity in punching. Hooking. Uppercuts. Punch ranks first, your spar mate, general defense and blocking, deflection, evasion, feinting and drawing, and then at chapter 24 we had the subject of today's video, training. Oh, and then at chapter 25 there's how to watch a fight. Because specifically, he says that if you want to actually get the information from watching a fight, there's a specific way to do it. His main rule being, don't focus on the guy you want to win. Focus on what's happening in the fight. So don't think about how the fighter you're following is punching and dodging. Think about who's punching and who's dodging, rather than focusing on one person. But enough about that. Chapter 24, Training, on page 179. And if you want to follow along, this book is public domain, so you can find a PDF copy online for free. So, training has two objectives. 1, to condition your body for fighting, and 2, to improve your workmanship as a fighter. This is true. Most of the training that a fighter will do is either, endurance work or technical work. The strength training, generally speaking, is pretty minimal. Especially back in these days, because it was generally believed that strength training made you slower. Okay. Although some exercise help condition and others speed improvement, there's one all-important activity that assists both. That activity is sparring. There is no substitute for sparring. You must spar regularly and often become a well-rounded scrapper, regardless of what other exercises you may take. Sparring not only improves your skill, but it also conditions your body for fighting by forcing your muscles to become accustomed to the violent, broken movements that distinguish fighting from any other activity. Now, this is actually a really interesting point, because it is contested. Sparring is widely considered to be the most important training that you'll do as a fighter, to the point where most people will say if you don't spar, you can't fight. However, I do disagree. Would I say sparring is in the top 10 most important training methods? Probably. but I don't even think it would make the top 5 if I ever made that list, which I might make an interesting video. But in terms of saying using sparring as a metric for conditioning the body in a endurance sense, it makes sense, but at the same time you won't get the proper volume to massively increase your endurance consistently. But because there yeah it but like he mentions, the broken rhythm of fighting leads to irregular points that your body will have to get used to. So there is a 50-50 on the logic there. And see where it's coming from, but at the same time it's it's not inherently wrong or inherently right. It's it's generally going to come down more to the person than anything. And of course, saying that you have to spar to be a well-rounded scrapper, as he puts it, I wouldn't say you have to do it off yet. You have to do it nearly as often as he says. He says regularly and often. My guess is that means either every day or often enough to be considered equivalent to that. I don't think daily sparring is essential to becoming a fighter, but at the same time, I don't think it's gonna make you worse. It'll definitely give you more experience, but hard sparring on a daily basis will mess you up. Okay. Much has been written about rhythm in fighting. Nearly every scrapper develops some rhythm in his movements, in footwork, bobbing, weaving, etc. Some fancy dans appear to have almost as much rhythm as a ballet dancer when they shadow box. Like Ali. He didn't say that, that was me commenting. Okay. Your opponent's feints, leads, counters, and defensive moves will break your rhythm. Oh wait, sorry, I skipped a line. But when the chips are down, rhythm is destroyed. Your opponent's feints, leads, counters, and defensive moves will break your rhythm in a hurry and will force your movements on attack or defense to be necessities of the split second, to be violent and broken. Because the movements in fighting are violent and broken, fighting is perhaps the most tiring of all human activities. Some college experts insist that rowing in a crew is more exhausting than boxing. I don't know about that. I've never rowed in a crew, but I do know that crewmen have a rhythm or beat to which they time their strokes. A fellow may be a perfectly conditioned athlete for some other activity like basketball, football, baseball, rodeo, right, acrobatics, hurdling, wrestling, etc. But if he hasn't had sparring practice, he will be completely exhausted by 1 or 3 minutes of fast fighting. His muscles will be unaccustomed to the movements, and he will be unaccustomed to breathing while making those movements and while being hit. Now, interestingly enough, I'm not too sure about wrestling in that context. But I am willing to give. But yeah, given that the massive difference between striking and grappling, I do see the logic. Logic in saying that a wrestler wouldn't have the correct endurance for boxing, especially because the footwork is completely different between the two of them. And it makes sense that he would know more than I do because I'm not a wrestler, although I'm working on getting my wrestling better. And Jack Dempsey was a catch wrestler and a judoka. I will say though, rodeo riding, the rhythm there is all kinds of messed up. Okay. For a beginner at least, sparring is the most important conditioning activity. Sparring also is the most important sharpening activity. It perfects your timing and judgment of distance in punching against a live and elusive target. It makes you adroit on defense and alert in countering. It grooms you to make exactly the right combination of moves in a split second instinctively. Now, Jack Dempsey was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the 1920s, and he would go on to live a very long life and all that. But when this book was written specifically, we didn't have training tools like the double end bag, the reflex bag, the cobra bag, or even the slit bag. I don't think. So a lot of the training tools that can emulate a resisting opponent weren't options. So it is possible Jack Dempsey could have changed his mind later later on in life, but I don't think he would have. Genuinely, yeah, sparring is trying to put this to words. In the eyes of people like this, sparring is non-negotiable. Not only is it non-negotiable, which makes sense for a pro boxer, but it's but everything else is completely worthless in comparison, which makes sense. Experience was everything to guys like this. And I do realize that because I've read a page about nothing but sparring, I'm just repeating myself. Okay, but we finally have another exercise. Shadowboxing is the next best exercise for the twofold purpose of conditioning and sharpening. It might be described as fighting an imaginary opponent. It is particularly helpful in developing footwork. Although most professional fighters do not use boxing gloves during their shadow work, beginners should use them. Their weight will help to develop stamina. As you shadow box, go through the same offensive and defensive moves you use in sparring. To be most valuable, your imaginary fighting should be done at top speed. Too many scrappers loaf at this work. Now, three interesting things here. First, he says that you should, yes, that beginners especially should wear their boxing gloves while they shadow box to help build stamina. This is actually similar to the modern practice of practicing your punches or your shadow boxing with while holding dumbbells. The entire point is to wait because you're holding weights in your hands, you're putting more taxing, more fatigue onto the muscles involved, specifically the shoulders, and as such building more endurance in them, especially once you put down the weights. So genuinely speaking, there's nothing wrong with that. Then, of course, saying you should shadow box at full speed for maximum benefit. In terms of endurance work, that's absolutely true. In terms of technique work, I'd usually say I'm usually a proponent of going half speed to 3/4 speed for a lot of it, just to really focus on the technical aspect of it. But at the same time, I'm more of a technical fighter anyway. That and also, I'm not exactly the fastest guy anyway. Okay. And okay, so let me just okay, and then he says that shadowboxing is particularly good in developing footwork. Now, I can see the logic here. Yeah, where you're doing your shadowboxing to practice your using your footwork for the setups, and namely entering, circling, angling off, to the side, all that. But feels a bit weird to say that shadowboxing particularly helps footwork. Not that it's not true, just that it's the thing he chose to single out. Okay. Next up, bag punching is another exercise that conditions and sharpens. At every practice session, you should work 3 rounds on the light inflated bag and 2 rounds on the heavy dummy bag. Speaking of rounds, I advise that in your early training, sparring, shadowboxing, bag punching, etc., you limit each round to 2 minutes. Rest 1 minute between rounds. Later, you can extend each round to 3 minutes, the same time used in rounds in professional fights, and for rounds by professionals in gymnasiums. However, continue to limit each rest period to 1 minute. Now, I do think it's a little bit interesting here how he specifically put both the heavy bag and the speed bag in the same paragraph here, and then chose this time to say how long the rounds are going to be. But yeah, so this is pretty standard, 2 to 3 minute minute length rounds with 1 minute rest in between. I believe has always been the standard for boxing, or at least since the Queensberry rules, I believe. But I could be wrong on that. My boxing experience is that isn't exactly anything to look too keenly on. Okay. Work on the bags will develop all the muscles you use in punching, and will give tone to them. Your chest, shoulders, and arms will take on the sleek, well-rounded appearance that distinguishes the body of most fighters from those of ordinary chaps. Work on the light bag is more important than on the heavy bag. For the light bag is a speedy target that sharpens your timing, judgment of distance, as it conditions your muscles. For each session of a light bag punching, you should make certain that the bag is about chin height and that it is firmly attached to the top board. If it becomes unscrewed from the top board when you're punching, you may get struck in the face by the metal attachment. If your bag is too low, the top board will be too low, and you may strike the board with your fist if you miss a punch. In some punching bag standards, the board can be lowered or raised. However, if the board is stationary, the gymnasium proprietor usually provides a small wood platform 5 or 6 inches high on which a short chap can stand and be in proper position to hit the bag. Now, he says that he said that the speed bag is more important to work with than the heavy bag. This is actually a really interesting point because one of the things that Dempsey was known for was hitting hard, hard enough to where people would feel the punch days after. So, genuinely speaking, the fact that he was able to develop such power while he didn't put too much of an emphasis on usage of the heavy bag is actually quite impressive. So, but going forward with this, saying that the usage of the heavy bag and the speed bag defines the muscles that are utilized in punching is true. It's mostly with this, though, you won't exactly have much in the ways of muscle damage, so the primary factor of generating muscle growth here would be time under tension. So ultimately, if you're trying to to develop your muscles through this kind of training, you got to do a lot of volume with your training, throwing a lot of punches with a lot of force. And with the speed bag, well, it's very good for for targeting the shoulders. But you won't see much in the ways of actually developing the shoulder muscles from usage of it. But I will say he did miss one thing. You actually train the back quite well with this as well. It's just less noticeable because the back is because the back takes more to grow than the pectoral or the interior deltoids. Right. Devote 1 minute of each round on the light bag to the straight and backhand tattoo. You do that tattoo in the normal punching position without moving the feet. The tattoo goes like this: straight left, backhand left. Straight right, backhanded right. Straight left, backhanded left, etc. That exercise not only develops your muscles and timing for punching from the whirl, but it also gives you the powerful blocking or slicing backhand during the other minute or 2 minutes of each round. You should practice all your head blows. Stepping straight, fast medium range exchanges, shovels, corkscrews, tight outside hooks, and uppercuts. Be careful not to strike the top board with your uppercuts. Hit the bag hard. Don't get in the habit of using light stuff, even on the back. Okay, so specifically saying that you should practice the left straight back fist combo against the speed bag. This actually makes perfect sense because he states earlier in the book that the reason to practice the back fist, even though it's illegal in boxing, is because it's meant to be a way of parrying. So, using the speed bag, he's both training his punches, but also his hand fighting as well. And he's saying that you should devote a certain amount of time to it rather than a certain number of reps. So, genuinely speaking, as you progress in your training and get faster, more efficient with your movements, you'll only get better at getting more and more reps in with this. That's good. And of course, he talks about using this to practice all your headshots. That makes sense. Since you're practicing striking something at head height that's moving. Yeah, in general directions like this. So it makes sense to practice your headshots on that. All right. And he says always hit hard, even against hard, especially on the bag because you don't want to get in the habit of using light strikes. I understand this, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You're trying to build the habit of always punching hard. Genuinely speaking, the only time I'll hold back my strikes in training at any point is when I'm striking the Makiwara. I don't really put force into it. I kind of just let the weight of my arm carry it. When I'm sparring, because I only do light sparring. And whenever in class we're told that we have to work back fists or chest blocks from the back stance because it screws with my joints. Okay, next up, the heavy bag serves two purposes. One, it accustoms you to landing solidly with every type of punch to head or body. And two, it provides a body target that's lacking in light bag work. Practice all your punches on the dummy. Use the proper footwork when you do so. Spend about 1 minute of every round sharpening your bob and weave attack. Slide in with corkscrews to the body, then barrage the body terrifically with hooks. Next, lift the barrage to the head. Next time you slide in, try a mixed barrage in which one fist smashes the body and the other to the head. Then the head fist to the body and the other side to the head, etc. Practice combination series after you slide in. This is pretty standard, heavy bag talk here. But let's look at this. Okay, first, it accustoms you to landing solidly with every type of punch. That, in a technical term, this is referred to as kinesthetic feedback. If there's anything wrong with the form of your strike, hitting a solid object will tell you. If you're not bending your arm so you feel a pain in your elbow when you strike, it'll tell you. If you're bending your arm too much so your elbow buckles at the moment of impact, it'll tell you. If you're not straightening your wrist properly, it'll tell you. So if there's anything wrong with your technique, you'll know through the training against solid objects. Okay, two, it gives you more room to work with picking your targets to practice. Specifically, he says body shots as well as head shots, which is very sensible. He even gives logical combinations to utilize during practice for the new people. Okay, next up. Use your own striking gloves on both bags. If you use some other fellow's gloves and skin your knuckles, you may get your hands infected. Put camphor ice on your skinned knuckles before you go to bed. In a few weeks, your knuckles will become calloused and you'll have no more trouble with them. That's generally just good practice. Never use another person's gloves if you can avoid it. And even if you have your gloves, clean them. I usually spray mine down with Lysol after every sparring session. Okay. Oh, and he says that your knuckles will become calloused after a few weeks of training, and then you won't have trouble with skinning your knuckles. That is not entirely true. You definitely can still skin them. Yeah, tearing the skin on your hands is gonna happen when you're doing full force work. It doesn't happen often though if you've got calloused knuckles. But just be careful. Okay. Good exercises for conditioning the body are road work, rope skipping, and calisthenics. That's fairly accurate. Road work means running on the road. Running strengthens the legs and develops stamina. It also takes off weight if you wear warm, heavy garments while running. Regardless of other apparel, you must wear shoes that also have sturdy soles and tops that come up over your ankles. Also, you should wear heavy socks to prevent your feet from becoming blistered. If you are soft and poorly conditioned, when you begin training, you should harden yourself by hiking over rough ground for at least 2 weeks before attempting any running. When you do begin to run, Take it easy at first. Limit yourself to dog trot jogs of about a half-mile each morning for 7 days, and gradually increase the distance until you are jogging about 2 miles. After you become accustomed to road work and your feet have hardened, mix up your runs by sprinting for 100 yards, then jogging, then shadowboxing for a few seconds, then jogging, then sprinting, etc. Nearly all professional fighters do their road work early in the morning. Do yours whenever you get the chance. Naturally, you'll take a shower when you come back from your spin. Professionals do from 3 to 10 miles on the road. Okay, now let's look at this here. For starters, saying running for stamina is a great thing. It's one of the fundamental human movements, so it's something we should all be able to do, unless we have a genuine physical limitation that's stopping us. Like if you're a paraplegic, I'm not expecting a paraplegic to be running, but yeah. But for boxing specifically, I think it's great, especially because it's a good way, yeah, yeah, to add some form of lower body training. Because a lot of people, boxers especially, in my experience, don't really do much in the ways of training the lower body. Of course, there are exceptions. I mean, just look at any compilation of Mike Tyson's training. Half of it's leg work. Now, from there, he specifically gives a tire for you to wear during the run. He says you can lose weight if you wear warm, heavy garments when you're running. Now, this is most likely reference to trying to sweat out extra stuff. Yeah, by wearing insulated clothing, so you sweat more. This is something that many boxers have done and still do to this day, but nowadays we have sauna suits, which are so much more efficient. This will not actually make you lose weight. The second you drink water, the weight will come back on. But it does have a bunch of health benefits, including general respiratory benefits. So, yes, wearing thick insulating clothing while you do your runs can improve your endurance. Just make sure you're not overheating. Then he says, wear thick-soled shoes that have tops that come over the ankles. This is with that, wearing thick socks. Combining the three of these is meant to give both ankle support to prevent you from rolling or spraining your ankle. The thick soles and the thick socks are to protect the bottoms of your feet from blisters and general tears. Funnily enough, the modern equivalent the modern idea of all of this is to just not do that. Minimal footwear is actually encouraged these days. But especially for beginners, I do agree with the context of if you're just starting to do all this stuff and you're trying to do intense work, yeah, protect your feet. I mean, back in the day when I used to jump rope for well over an hour a day, I would always wear thick socks, specifically to protect my toes. And of course, he talks about working up to the standard road work methods. Specifically, he says hike for a couple weeks, over rough terrain to harden your body and feet specifically, to accustom them, to the ability to run. This makes perfect sense. Train up your body so that against rough terrain and in lower intensity stuff so that it can handle the running without issue. And then it's mostly about distance before adding in extra factors. Genuinely speaking, this is perfect talk about how to start running as boxing. Practice. Right, next up, rope skipping. Develop stamina, coordination, and leg spring. At a good sports goods store, you can buy a skipping rope, not one of those toy ropes that kids use. Or you can make a rope by soaking a piece of clothesline overnight in a can of light lubricating oil. Hang up the rope and let it dry out for a day. And fold the ends of the rope back and tape them into handles with bicycle tape. The skipping rope should be fairly heavy, but not too thick. That's why you give it the oil treatment. In skipping, you do not jump with both feet at the same time, nor do you skip with the hippity hop like a schoolgirl. Instead, you bounce off one foot and then off the other. This will seem awkward at first, but soon you'll be skipping with an effortless grace that will surprise you and your friends. To make skipping interesting, you can learn to do it backwards. You can learn to cross the rope forward and backwards, and to make the rope go around twice while you're in the air once. You'll have a lot of fun with the rope. You'll even be able to do footwork while skipping, and perhaps you'll even be able to dance a jig while the rope is swirling around you. Naturally, skipping is done in a gymnasium or in whatever you are using for a gym. Do at least 2 rounds of skipping at each workout. Okay, now let's talk about this. Now, I like that he gave a way to make a jump rope. It's a little outdated for the modern times because I genuinely would have an easier time getting a jump rope than clothesline, light lubricating oil, and bike tape. I'd have to go to like 3 different stores to get that, or Amazon. But yes, he is right. You'll get leg spring, endurance, and what was the other thing? And coordination from jump rope. However, one thing that I will say, he specifically says that that you're not going to do the jump rope with both feet or a hippie hop like a schoolgirl. I just thought that one was funny. But doing the jump rope with both feet is perfectly fine. But what he's referring to is generally called the boxer step. It's actually a very interesting technique, and a lot of people say it's easier because you're spreading the fatigue out across both legs rather than taking it on both at the same time. I say the main problem is the coordination timing, which is one of the reasons why it's so good for boxers, because you're learning extra coordination for your with your feet and the timing of your footwork. Going from there, it's actually really interesting how he gives a bunch of ways to make skipping rope more interesting, such as learning to do it backwards, crossing it over, which we've all done, making the rope go around you twice. That's nowadays we call those double unders. Generally more for speed and power generation than just being interesting. But the fact that he thought of it just as a way to make skipping more interesting is pretty impressive. Okay, now he says do at least 2 rounds of skipping at each workout. Funnily enough, when I was doing boxing, they would always have us do, start each session with at least 3 rounds. So I'm curious if was 2 rounds the standard at the time that Dempsey was active, or was that just him? Either way. Okay, calisthenics. For a fighter, are exercises designed chiefly to build up protective muscles in his stomach and neck and make him supple. Fighters should avoid heavy exercises like weightlifting, for they tend to make him muscle bound. Like I mentioned, people avoided a lot of strength training back in the day because they thought it would make them slow. Now, with the modern understanding of exercise science, it's pretty understood that while it can, if you overdo it, the appropriate amount of weight training, with the appropriate exercise choice, will only benefit you. Okay. Bending exercises are best to develop the stomach muscle into a protective washboard against body blows. Best bending exercise is done while laying on your back with on a reasonably soft surface such as a mat or several thickness of towels. Lie stretched out flat with your feet together and your arms extended back of back of your head. Bend forward slowly, bringing your hands up in an arc, and touch your toes with your hands. Then return slowly to your original stretched out position. If your feet rise when you bend forward, have someone hold them down. Repeat the bending until you are tired. At first, you'll tire quickly, but in a few weeks, you'll be able to do 25 to 30 bends. Later, 50 to 100. Now, what he's describing here is basically sit-ups, except I think his version is better because the main problem with sit-ups is that rather than targeting the abs, you're just putting strain on your hip flexors at a lengthened position, which leads to them becoming weakened, causing back pain and weak hips. But because he's keeping his legs stretched out with that, not only are the hip flexors not in a lengthened position, but you're not really putting weight on them, putting stress on them at all. He even says if your legs come up, which would be the case of your hip flexors being put under stress. Explain what is the is you're supposed to not do that. So yeah, this is good. Although he is also saying it's the best ab exercise, more or less, which I've never, I don't, I've never really said there's a best one. But I will say, if, this version of sit-ups is good. Personally, if I was going to choose a single sit-up variant to have as the main one for boxing, it would be the decline sit-ups with that twist at the top. Also, I like how he specifically, says do them until you're tired. I'm not really entirely sure exactly what he means by that. If he means tired, like you start to feel it, or you struggle, you get a little bit difficult to get through the set, or if he genuinely means do it until you can't do it anymore without stopping. Because they avoided a lot of strength work, but with high rep ab work, it feels like that's something that he would genuinely be okay with. And the phrase "do it until you're tired" is a little difficult to understand, especially for a guy like Dempsey. Genuinely, the only time in his life that he was knocked out was after he had gone 4 days without eating because a mix of Great Depression and being homeless. All right. You can break the bending monotony by spreading your legs and touching the left toes with your right hand, and on the next bend, your right toes with your left hand, etc. Also, you can lock your hands behind your neck and in that position, bend forward until your chin goes between your knees. Keeping your hands in that position, touch your left knee with your right elbow on one bend and your right knee with the left elbow on the next one, etc. This is actually interesting because it's basically what I just talked about. He's doing the twist to essentially, by angling off to the different sides when he does his reps. This adds training to the obliques, the muscles on the sides of the torso that are responsible for rotation. He does it to break up the monotony of just doing a single exercise for a bunch of reps. But it's great for developing a muscle that is generally undertrained for a lot of people. So he accidentally made a really good decision. And of course, trying to do sit-ups where you're putting your forehead between your legs when you come up. It's a decent mobility movement. A little rough on the lower spine. I will say. All right. Be certain to do those bends on a soft surface so that you cannot injure the vertebrae of your lower spine. In a standing position, you can go through practically the same bends. Keep your knees stiff while doing them. However, these bends are much more beneficial if done while laying down. The stomach muscles are required to do more work. Okay, if you do these standing up, you're no longer doing sit-ups. It doesn't even target the abs at that point. What you're doing is basically a body weight stiff-legged deadlift or a body weight good morning, essentially. So you're kind of doing some training for the hamstrings and the lower back. which is genuinely good. The lower back is underdeveloped in most people, especially people who don't train it. And the hamstrings, well, with as much as he was running, especially on uneven terrain, his hamstrings probably would have been would have gotten decent development. Okay. So it can be a good exercise. Just don't treat it like an ab exercise. Okay. Neck muscles should be strong to absorb the shock of head punches. Best exercise for strengthening neck muscles is the bridge. Lie on your back on the lie on your back on the mat. Lock your hands on your chest. Make a simple bridge by raising your body until it's supported by your feet and your head. Still in the simple bridge, roll back on your head until your forehead is touching the mat. Then return to the simple bridge. And then your stretched out position. Repeat the procedure several times. You can also strengthen the neck muscles while you're standing. Turn the head from side to side, and on each turn, stick out the chin as far as possible towards the shoulder. Okay, this is actually interesting because the wrestler's bridge, that he's talking about, nowadays is a very controversial exercise. Because without a solid foundation of neck training, you're basically asking for severe neck injuries. That being said, I've done it in the past, and I probably will continue to do it. But the way that he does this isn't just a simple, okay, hold, the bridge position and strengthen the back of my neck. Now he's going through movements, working his neck through the full range of motion in these sides, and he's turning his head, like this to, work the sideways rotation. It's good. Although, if you want to do a safer version of this, you can do anti-rotation stuff. Like, one thing that I'll do often is I'll, lay kind of like in a reverse plank position where I'll rest the back of my head on a surface, usually like a box, box jump, thing. And I'll just lay like this to do the anti-rotation work like this. And I used to lean with my head against a wall like this as anti-rotation stuff for the sideways portions. You can also use bands, but this feels, like it's closer to the bridge itself. And of course, if you have a solid foundation in neck training, there's no reason not to do the bridge if you really want to do the wrestler's bridge. It's specifically a good stretch, especially if you're a wrestler. Hence the name Wrestler's Bridge. But moving on. There are many other exercises you can learn around the gymnasium that you can use if you decide to go into amateur or professional competition. But those I've given you are plenty to help you become a well-rounded scrapper. For example, you develop strength in your arms and shoulders by using wall pulleys and by doing push-ups from the floor. Some trainers do not approve of the pulleys or the push-ups. They believe that those forms of exercise tend to make you muscle-bound. I approve of them, unless you already are heavily muscled in the shoulders and arms. You can strengthen your hands outside the gymnasium by carrying with you a rubber handball and squeezing the ball for a couple of hours each day. First in one hand and then in the other. I advise that if your hands are fragile, for strong, durable hands are very important for fighting. Strong hands help your explosions and can often also help prevent broken bones. Some trainers harden the stomach muscles of their fighters by throwing a medicine ball at their stomachs. The fighter stands with his arms relaxed, but lets the ball hit him squarely in the body. He catches the ball and it bounces off his stomach and returns it to the trainer for another throw. That's a good hardening procedure for a fellow who's already had 2 or 3 years of training, but I wouldn't advise it for the average beginner. You might injure yourself internally. Okay, now let's look at these exercises that he specifically goes over here. Now, usage of a pulley machine in the gym is good. It's basically the same thing as modern cable machines, which I utilize quite often. He does, however, not give specific exercises with the cables, so there's plenty to think from. There are the standard shoulder exercises. Like I'm a fan of lateral raises. But then there's also, this for the back portion of the shoulders, the interior deltoids or anterior deltoids. I'm very tired right now. And then, of course, there's the cable punch out, which I think is very good for boxing specifically. And, of course, cable rows as a way of developing the back muscles, which are very good for punching. Then push-ups. They're one of my favorite exercises. I'm never going to talk bad about push-ups. And, of course, there's definitely worse ways to develop the arms. I mean, they work the triceps. They work the shoulders, specifically the interior deltoids. They work the chest. It's a good exercise. Now he talks about some trainers are against it, but he's in favor of it. That's a good stance. Don't just follow the masses. Make your own opinions. Dempsey says he's in favor of them as long as you aren't already muscular. Admittedly, though, I do think there should be an exception. Like if you want to maintain it, or if you want to tone down the muscularity while maintaining the appropriate muscular system. But yeah. Now he mentioned strengthening your hands by squeezing a rubber ball throughout the day. This is very similar to how in modern times we have grip trainers. But also, back when newspapers were prominent, it was common for people to keep a balled up piece of newspaper and just practice crushing it in their hands throughout the day to develop their grip strength. Okay, I say common, it was a common occurrence for strongmen. And I think bodybuilders. Okay, and he also talks about strong hands being good for preventing broken bones. Generally, I say developing the muscular system, yes, surrounding a bone or a joint, is a great way to reinforce it. But there are no muscles in the hands, it's all tendons. It's the forearms that have the muscles that control the hands. So I'm not going to inherently agree with that, but I do think it's really good to improve your grip strength for boxing because it allows you to make your fist more dense at the moment of impact. Okay, then he talks about utilizing, a medicine ball to condition the abs. But he also said that's a very good exercise for combat sports in general and martial artists. But he specifically says it's for people who've had a minimum of 2 to 3 years of training. That's a little tough to say here because he says the main reason being that you don't want to cause internal injuries, which makes perfect sense. I mean, a lot of the ab conditioning exercises you've seen in the past that have been popular, such as the hanging, one that you see Thai boxers doing where they hang from the bar while the guy throws body shots into him, has been proven to cause ulcers. So, wanting to avoid that to new people is genuinely sensible and ethical even. But 2 to 3 years to begin ab conditioning seems a little excessive. I mean, for me, I'd say 6 to 8 months, maybe. But admittedly, they were also doing a lot more hard work back then, when it in general. So I'm not going to inherently disagree because the context might be the key difference here. In why he says 2 to 3 years. But and but I'm also not going to inherently agree because I do think it's a little much. All right, going forward. Every boxer, beginner or seasoned professional, must have a gymnasium schedule and a general schedule for the day. And he does best when he sticks to those schedules. As you've had 6 weeks to 2 months of preliminary and formal training, while learning punching and defense and practicing them in sparring, you might adopt a gymnasium schedule like this. Shadow boxing, 2 rounds. Sparring, 3 rounds. Heavy bag, 2 rounds. Light bag, 3 rounds. Rope skipping, 2 or 3 rounds. Calisthenics, 2 rounds. Now, like you mentioned previously, the timed exercises should be done 2 to 3 minutes, depending on your level, with a 1 minute break between. And the calisthenics is generally just done a set until you're tired. I think that means until failure, but I could be wrong. Now, this is actually a very good point from Mr. Dempsey here. If you want to be efficient in gaining your progress through your training, you want to have a schedule so you're doing consistent work and progressively marking up your training so you can improve. If you guys actually want to see the routines that I follow, let me know in the comments and you'll get a video on it. And I will say, I do think the order here of his training is a little weird. Personally, I would have put jump rope at the start of it, and then shadow boxing. Then probably calisthenics, then speed bag, then heavy bag, and then finish on sparring. I think it's a little weird to end on calisthenics. Just because once you've gone through all the cardio work, and once you've gone through all the training, especially the sparring and conditioning, you're no longer going to have it in you to give all your work into the conditioning. Okay. Next up, take a 1 minute rest between rounds. Having finished your workout, you take a 5 minute sweat out by sitting relaxed or by laying down in the dressing room. In either case, you are warmly wrapped in your bathrobe or in a sheet. Make certain you are not in a drought. It just means don't be dehydrated. Or don't be in a very dry area. You want some humidity. After the sweat out, take a quick lukewarm shower. If the workout's made your muscles stiff and sore, you should take a rub down after the shower. Most professionals take a rub after each workout as insurance against soreness and to keep their muscles supple. The rub down man, applies soothing lotions to the muscles as he kneads them with his fingers. You doubtless will not have the services of a rubber while you are learning to fight. However, you might arrange for your sparring pal to rub you down in return for rubbing him. You lie on your back on a rubbing table or on towels on the floor. Let him work on the front muscles of your shoulders, arms, and stomach. Then turn over. Let him knead the rear muscles of the shoulder, arms, and legs. If you can't make an arrangement like that, you can apply rubbing lotion to your own muscles after each session. If you need such treatment, you can make your own rubbing preparation by mixing the following: 3 ounces of rubbing alcohol, 3 ounces of witch hazel, 1 ounce of wintergreen, and 1 ounce of olive oil. I know what 2 of those things are, but okay. If you have engaged in a particularly violent sparring session or in a bruising fight, you can prevent soreness in muscles and bruises taking an Epsom salt bath at home. Fill a bathtub nearly to the top with very warm water and pour in 5 pounds of Epsom salt. Lie in the tub half an hour and go to bed. Now, let's talk about this. It mostly boils down to the recovery after, or in between training sessions. Now, he talks about a sweat out. This actually feels a lot, similar to a cool down, that you would see in a lot of modern training. I've personally never been the biggest fan of cooldowns, but sweat outs make sense. Specifically, just take a bit, finish, finish off sweating because you don't want to switch back into your daily wear, or put your jacket back on while you're still sweating. You want to be able to wipe your brow and not have to, and not get sweat all over your jacket or your street clothes. Okay, then he's talking about taking a lukewarm shower. He says, pretty consistently, after you train, you take a shower. That's just general courtesy. Now, he talks about massage after every session, specifically to prevent soreness. I think every day, specifically after every session, I think that's a little redundant. I think once a week is more than sufficient. I mean, I don't know. I've never actually had a massage done before. But there are some benefits, specifically with mobility. And of course, if you want an example of how it helps with muscle soreness, just try a massage gun. It genuinely helps a lot. So, I think it's a little excessive, but it definitely has benefits. He also talks about using soothing lotions. Um, good way to keep your skin moisturized, I guess. I think I don't actually remember entirely what lotion's purpose is. I've never used it. All right, and he talks about how to make it yourself. Admittedly, though, good way of showing how old this book is. It talks about ingredients like witch hazel and wintergreen, which I have never heard of. I mean, I might have heard of wintergreen at some point. It sounds familiar, but I've never heard of witch hazel. Okay, next. And then he talks about using Epsom salt, yeah, baths, yeah, to actually help it to prevent injuries from overdoing it in sparring or if you've been in a fight. And I actually use this. Now I don't use 5 pounds of Epsom salt because that stuff's expensive. It's actually not. I just don't like buying multiple bags. Although I'm not the biggest fan of how he says very warm water, because I'm not sure exactly where the cutoff point between warm, very warm, and hot is. I mean, if I'm actually taking a bath, I'm using the hottest water possible. But, okay. And then he talks about, just soaking in Epsom salt water for half an hour before bed. That's actually pretty sensible. And, sitting in hot water for half an hour before bed probably can help you sleep too. Okay. And finally, we get to the most interesting part of the chapter. All right. All professionals do their gym work in the afternoon, but most amateurs have to do theirs at night because most amateurs have jobs in the daytime. High school and college boys are exceptions, of course. They usually can do their gym work in the late afternoon. Regardless of when you go to the gymnasium, and regardless of whether you're an amateur or professional, you should do your road work early in the morning. Here's a good daily training schedule for an amateur who has a job. It goes as follows, and we're going to break this down quite quickly. 6 a.m. Rise. Drink a cup of hot tea or a cup of beef broth or chicken broth. Now, drinking a cup of hot tea has plenty of benefits, and of course, drinking a hot beverage early in the morning often will help wake you up, get everything going. Main reason why a lot of people drink coffee, especially because tea does have caffeine in it. But as far as I know, it doesn't act like a diuretic the way coffee does. Now, switching out the tea for beef broth or chicken broth, I assume that it's also heated up because drinking cold chicken broth sounds horrible. But I'd say it's about the same thing, but non-caffeinated. And maybe it's just for people who don't, just as an option if a person doesn't like tea, which understandable. I know some people who genuinely hate tea with a passion. Okay, 6:30, hit the road. 7 a.m., arrive home, take a brief sweat out, and shower. So, by this estimate, road work should take you roughly half an hour. Okay, then breakfast. Fruit juice, cereal, eggs, and milk or tea. Let's look at this, okay? Fruit juice. This was before fruit juice was primarily sugar, so good way of getting some extra nutrients in. Cereal. This again was before cereal was mostly sugar. I believe cornflakes was one of the standards of the time period, and it genuinely was just bland, bland oats basically. And of course, milk would be put into it. So you're getting milk. Milk has plenty of health benefits, and a good source of fat. Eggs. Eggs are one of the most nutrient dense foods of them all, and if I had to say a single thing to add to every diet, diet for an athlete, eggs are up there. And then says milk or tea. Now, I like the choice here, and I see the reason being that you're already putting milk in the cereal, so you might just not want to have more milk. So tea is an option there. But maybe you do want milk. Maybe you just don't like tea. Yeah. Hey, 12:30. Lunch of lettuce and tomato on toast, perhaps with 2 or 3 slices of bacon. So he's basically saying for lunch you can have a BLT. Then, glass of milk or a cup of tea. If you do not have bacon with the lettuce tomato sandwich, you can drink a malted milk. Now, interesting thing about malted milks, as far as I can attest from what I've researched for this, because I actually didn't know what malted milks were before before reading this book. As far as I can tell, they're actually quite healthy. I mean, you know, healthier than most things that I can attest to. So basically, lunch is a BLT, yeah, a cup of milk, or a cup of tea, and potentially a malted milk, as just like a treat. All right, 6 p.m. gymnasium. Have a hot cup of tea with lemon before the workout. Now this is a hot cup of tea with lemon. This feels very pre-workout-esque because tea generally has caffeine in it. It's a hot it's a hot liquid that you're drinking before your workout, so you're trying to raise your body temperature with it. And lemon generally just one has vitamin C is good for boosting the immune system, but primarily it's good for easing the throat. And oftentimes after training, I have a sore throat. That's probably just because in karate, screaming is a valid technique to use against an opponent. Okay, 6 p.m. is going to the gymnasium. 7:15 workout completed. 7:45 home and dinner. Now for dinner, half a grapefruit or a glass of fruit juice or a cup of broth. Now I see the logic here. Half a grapefruit or a glass of fruit juice. You're trying to get some extra fruit in there for some nutrients. So so a half a grapefruit, not a full grapefruit. That would be a bit much. Or a glass of fruit juice. Maybe you just don't like grapefruit, but you still want to get your nutrients in. Or a cup of broth. I do think that's a little ridiculous. Yeah, how you're switching up from fruit juice to meat broth. I mean, I get it. I don't know. Maybe you just want a beverage, but you really hate fruit. That's genuinely the only thing I can see there. Okay, a salad with olive oil and perhaps lemon juice. No vinegar. Funnily enough, the olive oil has a lot of health benefits, but definitely has more calories than the salad yet ever would. Now, I don't know why he's saying no vinegar. It's possible there was some health concerns for vinegar back in the past. I mean, maybe he's just warning people that vinegar tastes horrible. Okay, meat. Anything broiled or boiled, nothing fried. Steaks, chops, or chicken. Now, I'm just going to say this right now. Don't boil your food. I mean, don't boil meat specifically unless you're boiling it in like broth, because it's horrible to boil any kind of meat otherwise, unless you're making like a soup. And of course, broiling, you can still do it, but personally, I'm a big proponent of pan frying. I think pan frying is just as valid an option as broiling. That is, I mean, especially because I actually don't know how to use a broiler. Funny though. Okay. It says here, stews are good if you need to gain weight. I'm actually not too sure about that because generally from the recipes for stews that I've seen in the past, it's mostly just meat, broth, and maybe some vegetables put in there. And of course, maybe some noodles or rice. It's kind of up in the air, but I don't really see stews specifically being more good for gaining weight unless it's like you're adding a bowl of stew to the meal, which genuinely I can see that. Stews are good if you need to gain weight. Also a baked potato if you need weight. Now, baked potatoes are great, but the real question here is stuff being added into the baked potato? Because a lot of that is generally the standard that I've seen, where it's putting stuff in the baked potato. And if you are adding stuff into the baked potato, what? Personally, I'd say if you want a healthy baked potato to add to a meal like this to help you gain weight, I'd say put in some shredded chicken, maybe a little bit of cheese, shredded cheese, and maybe put some salt on it. I think that's about it. Chicken's already seasoned, so you don't need to add much, and the cheese is helping. Maybe add some sauce of some kind. Uh, a 0 calorie sauce, preferably like barbecue sauce or mustard. Just kidding. Mustard's horrible. Okay, but no pork, veal, lobster, shrimp, crab meat, or starchy foods like spaghetti. Now, let's break this down. No pork. Makes sense. Pork is high in fat, generally speaking. If you eat the same amount of pork as you do with something like chicken, it will cause massive weight gain due to it having a much higher much higher caloric content, but also the higher fat content, which causes it. But it also is high in collagen, so give and take. No veal. I'm with that just on the ethical standpoint. But mutton in general, from what I hear, doesn't taste too good, but also but also I actually haven't looked too much into the nutritional content, because when was the last time you went to the store and they had mutton? Okay, no lobster. And no shrimp. And crab meat. So we got 3 different types of shellfish here. I'm not sure what he has against shellfish. Yeah, but maybe it's because of the high prevailing food allergies, or the fact that you got to eat a lot of them to have the same satiation as other foods, or maybe just the fact that you generally will put more stuff yeah, into seafood to make it taste good than other stuff. With like, can't have lobster without melted butter. Okay, and now no starchy foods like spaghetti. That that's interesting because endurance athletes specifically are recommended to have more starch in their diets, but at the same time, starch. He specifically uses spaghetti as his metric for this, and pastas in general have very high calorie content. But so the question is, are starchy foods inherently for maintaining your weight, or is it just the calories in it? Personally, I say it's kind of a give and take. Like, I'm never going to stop eating spaghetti, and I eat it quite frequently, even though I'm currently trying to lose weight, and I'm making progress on that. So it generally just comes down to situation and individual person. Now, for dessert, stewed fruit, stewed fruit, prunes, apricots, pears, or rhubarb, etc. Hot tea and no pastries. I'm just going to be honest with you. If dessert is stewed fruit and the first thing that comes up is prunes, apricots, pears, and rhubarbs, I'm just going to skip dessert. And hot tea, being the second thing. I mean, what would be a good dessert tea? I mean, I hear peppermint's quite nice, and I like the flavor of peppermint. So you feel probably like a good dessert tea. I don't know. I don't even drink tea. And no pastries. That's understandable. Generally speaking, pastry has a lot of ingredients in general, but generally they're pretty high in sugar, calories in general because they're flour based, and well, a lot more stuff added. It just really depends on what kind of pastry we're talking here. Okay, 8:15, relax half an hour. 8:45, take a 15-minute walk. 9 p.m. bed. Right. The amateur's diet is about the same as that of a professional, but the pro schedule is much easier from the angle of time. The pro is on the road at 5:30 a.m. Returning to camp, he can rest until 10 a.m. When he has breakfast. When he loafs until noon, when he can have lunch or a nap, depending upon his weight. He begins his work at 2:30 p.m. Then he relaxes until dinner at 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m. After that, more loafing or a movie until 10 p.m. when he goes to bed. I like how he says or a movie here, as if that wouldn't classify as loafing as well, because loafing generally just means no physical activity, as far as I can tell. Okay. Admittedly, though, back in the 20s, if 20s or later on, I can't remember what year this book was written, you would have to walk to the cinema to see a movie if one was being shown. Okay. An amateur is training and working it on a job at the same time must make sure that he gets 8 or 9 hours of sleep every night. Otherwise, he may go stale. He may become listless or dopey on his job and off form in his sparring. He burns up much energy every day on the job and on the road and in the gym. He must get more than 8 hours sleep in 24 hours to restore his energy. And he should not sleep with his windows open. He can't get oxygen. He can't recharge his batteries by sleeping in a closed room. This is actually an interesting point, that he makes. Yeah, how if you sleep in a room with closed windows, the air can become stale. This is actually something that happens. Generally, it depends on the house and how well it's insulated and the other rooms of the house connecting, and if there's any gaps at any points, such as in my house currently, in my room specifically, I generally keep do something similar to make sure there's ventilation for air to get through, otherwise because it goes stale otherwise. The logic is sound. But that being said, if you're in a single story house, I gener yeah, or at least if your room's on the first floor of said house, I recommend keeping the windows closed just for safety reasons. Alright, I neither smoked nor drank before I became champion. I would not preach to others that they likewise should refrain from tobacco and alcohol. However, I believe that my avoidance of smoking and drinking gave me that extra bit of stamina which enabled me to win several hard fights by the narrowest of margins. Standard stuff. Don't drink, don't smoke. Just general healthy habits. That's good. And I like how he's not being preachy about it because one, he doesn't know how bad some of those things can be. I mean, to an extent. But also, I do think there's probably at least some things to be said here that it's just he actually would have, just due to the culture of the time, but he definitely couldn't afford it. At least that's my theory. Of course, he is right. Drinking and smoking is horrible for you, and with very few exceptions, there's no reason to do it. Like, some people, if they're suffering from restless bowel, smoking, cigarettes can genuinely help with that. But outside of that, there's genuinely no reason to smoke or drink. I mean, with drinking, the only real benefit would be that comes from the social aspect that comes with drinking. Yeah, but if it's not social drinking, there's no benefit. Okay. If you are in an area where no trainer or instructor is available, I suggest that when you go to your doctor for a physical checkup before attempting to spar, you also have your physician decide whether your weight corresponds properly to your height, bone structure, and age. Don't let any of your friends tell you, for example, you should weigh about 155 pounds because you're 5 feet 10 inches tall. Your weight depends considerably upon your bone structure. You may stand only 5 feet 7, yet properly weigh 200 pounds. If you are big boned and broad shouldered, husky but squat, you could be a 6-footer yet properly weigh 165 pounds, or even less if you are slender and small boned. Moreover, if you happen to be a youngster in the fast sprouting state, you could be skinny in all bones and joints, but still be normal. Your weight is very important. If you're too soft and flabby, you should pare off some poundage by exercise and proper diet, so your body will be firm for fighting. And if you're too skinny, exercise and wholesome food will help build you up. Find out from your doctor about how many pounds you should take off to be at your best weight, or how many pounds you should put on. That's genuinely good advice. Consult a doctor to see if you're a healthy weight for your body type. He specifically uses bone structure as the main thing here, which makes perfect sense. I do believe consulting a healthcare professional, specifically your doctor, generally, general practice being a very good option, or and getting a physical done, in general before things like sparring is great practice as well. Nothing to say here. Though you may resemble a circus fat man or a human skeleton, you'll be able to fight surprisingly well if you practice the fundamentals of explosive fighting I've explained in this book. You'll be able to stiffen many a fellow with one punch, or with a couple of punches. But remember this, you'll be able to fight better if you make your weight conform to your height and bone structure. Excess fat will slow you up and make you get winded in a hurry. Also, it will prevent your developing protective stomach muscles. On the other hand, if you're skinny and undernourished, you will not be able to hit as explosively as if you had your normal weight. Punches to the body will weaken, you more than they should, and you will tire more quickly than you should. Weight is ultra important in fighting. Get your right weight, make the proper use of it, and you'll have happy, explosive landings. Okay, so that was the chapter on training from championship fighting. It was a long one to talk about, but let's let's give a final review. Okay, so how does Jack Dempsey's training philosophy stack up in both the ideas of the more modern day and in my opinion? Well, from a strength training perspective, from a strength and conditioning perspective, his advice for running, spot on. There could be an argument made about how minimal footwear has its benefits, but generally speaking, the running advice is spot on. The jump rope advice is excellent, with a lot of, but with some of the stuff he mentions, he says it's to break the monotony of training, when in reality it has massive benefits. So, generally speaking, the jump rope, good. Not great because, the benefits of the advanced stuff like double unders or doing the X patterns with it will get missed. But the boxer step he talks about is good. Good for a lot of things. So, it's still good. For the strength training portion, I don't like that he didn't specify any exercises with the pulley machines. But I do like how he specifically said other coaches are against using the pulley machines or doing push-ups, but he supports it. That's a good trademark. Well, a good mark. Going further than that, yeah, the way that he says sparring and shadowboxing are the two most important things. Like I mentioned earlier, I don't particularly agree with the way that with the idea that regular and often sparring is absolutely essential. But the way that he talks about both of them makes pretty good reason for him to be primary factors of his training, especially because this was before a time when you could really get similar benefits through training tools and not recreational face punching. But that is generally what boxing is. Yeah, yeah. So, going from there, the additional exercises that he gave, like squeezing a rubber ball in your hand throughout the day, conditioning your stomach with a mat. Overall, the standard exercises are great. The training schedule, and diet plan that he gave, pretty solid. It's a little. Some parts are confusing, like how fruit. The fruit in your diet can apparently be replaced with broth. I thought that was amusing, to be honest. So, and of course, talking about ways to gain things to add into your diet to help you gain weight. No particular advice for for losing weight other than offhanded remark that if you're trying to lose weight, skipping lunch specifically. And then, yeah, yeah, of course, talk about all the recovery methods that are good for, boxers specifically. Overall, some of the stuff a little outdated. A lot of it though is timeless, and it just goes to show that when it comes to boxing, it hasn't really changed much. I mean, the rules have made it to where the sport looks completely different, but the martial art of boxing will never change. It's always going to be what it was, and the spirit will always be there. The training stayed consistent. Yeah, stayed consistent in a lot of the manners. So, even though Dempsey was one of the pioneers, I do believe, that a lot of the training here holds up. There are some corrections I would make, some things I would, yeah, some things that are definite that have been proven wrong over the years, like lifting weights doesn't make you muscle bound, as he put it. Yeah, but overall, I'd say definitely a good way to train. So, with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. If you have anything else you would like me to react to in Trainer Reacts, put it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. If you didn't enjoy this video, you can also share it, but to a person who you don't like. And of course, if you want to be notified of future videos, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and set it to all notifications or personalized notifications if you don't like all my content. But that being said, thank you all very much for watching. This is Randoman, signing off.